All right, I'd like to call to order the May 18th, 2022 Public Health and Safety meeting. Carrie, would you please call the roll?
Councilor Clark, Councilor Beach,
Here.
and Councilor Herbstreit.
Here. Approval of the minutes. We have the minutes from the March 16th Public Health and Safety Committee meeting. That was our last meeting. Unless there's edits, changes, or deletions, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Carrie, will you please? We don't need to call the roll, right?
Just
all those
all
in favor? Aye.
All
Yeah.
right.
All right.
Me.
Public comment now is not on the agenda for public comment. If anybody's here, please come to the mic, state your name, address.
And all the other fun stuff, yes. Phil Milstead, I'm at 2809 Ridgetop Court. I actually remembered it for a change, here in Winchester. And I'd like to say that about a year ago, we passed a resolution so that streets, when they are being put in new, are allowed to change their names when they cross a major street. Understandable, and it's better than what it had been in the past. However, I think we need to go further. I think we need to review the street names we have currently, see where we can make corrections. The problem is, any newcomer, visitor to the city or whatever such, a good tourist, can easily get lost because of the name changes. In fact, one of our councilors for the second ward was discussing with a citizen of such a problem in the second ward just this week. There is one that we're going to have, and I'm going to pretend that a piece of work has been completed that we hope is completed by the end of the month here, to go through this just to show you how absurd it really gets. If you take South Loudon Street out of downtown, on down, you get down to Weems. You're now on Paper Mill. You take that down to the next traffic light that is being installed now, which will be at Hope Drive. Well, Hope Drive cuts across the top of like a T intersection there, so you would think that's Hope Drive. No, you're making a left turn onto Paper Mill. Doesn't quite make sense to do that. It gets on down to Pleasant Valley. I looked for signs there to give me the name of the street once I crossed Pleasant Valley. At that point, I found none. When I look online on Google Maps, for instance, it tells me I'm on Tevis. Get down to the next traffic light, there are signs there that tell me where I am. It's Crossover Boulevard. This is a little bit absurd. Constant name changing like this, we need to get this under control. It makes our city look disorganized. We need to have a citywide study to see where we can make some changes and then be on guard for the future. I requested that the city consider doing such a study. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to make public comments? No? Okay. We'll move into the first agenda item, O-2022-20, an ordinance amending section 1427 of Winchester City Code regarding the speed limit on certain streets. Presenter, Harry Eisenach.
Good afternoon. So we're going to talk today about speed limits. And I'm guessing as city council members that you probably get a lot of concerns from residents about speeds and speed limits. And we do too. So that we've received quite a few over the past couple of years. So we've kept track of those. And so we've really kind of taken a look at all the speed limits throughout the city. Generally speaking, by Virginia State Code, in residential and business districts, which is pretty much all of the city, there is they set the speed limit in residential and business districts at 25 miles per hour. So that's kind of the default. As an independent city, we have the ability through city council action to change those speed limits. It's supposed to be done based on an engineering study so that you don't just go out and willy-nilly change speed limits. So we have looked at it from an engineering perspective, and we agree that some of the speed limits that we currently have in place we think should be changed. And so I'm going to highlight those, and these are the changes that we're recommending. So these changes would be in section 14-27 of City Code. So the first change is we're recommending that for all alleyways in the city that we establish a speed limit of 15. We think that 25 is too high. Most alleys, you should not be driving 25 miles an hour down. This would even include Indian Alley. You know, most alleys are very narrow. There's a lot of driveway entrances, and really, we think 15 is a safe, reasonable speed. The second change that we're recommending is to lower the speed limit on Millwood from Pleasant Valley coming in towards downtown to the CSX tracks. Right now, that's 35 miles an hour. It's really, for the most part, all residential. So we're recommending that Millwood from Pleasant Valley all the way to Cameron Street would be 25. It would be consistent. One of the streets that we probably receive the most concern about is speeds on Pleasant Valley. And this is from Berryville Avenue all the way down to Millwood. Right now, the speed limit is 40 miles an hour. And a lot of cars drive a lot faster than that. The way that road was designed, it's pretty much a straight shot, 4 lanes, wide lanes. It was designed for a high rate of speed. And so people feel comfortable driving that speed, and they drive very fast down there. What we're recommending is that we change the striping on the street, where right now you have the double yellow line and then the 2 lanes on each side. We're recommending that we expand the yellow in the center, so it's about 7 feet wide. It would be marked out with hashes, and it would narrow the lanes from 12 feet down to about 10.25, 10.5 feet. When people are in narrower lanes, they generally drive slower. So we're recommending that we lower the speed limit down to 35, but it be done in conjunction with changing the striping on the street. Because I think if we didn't do that, people are still going to drive just as fast as they do today. And our goal is to lower the speed on the street. The fourth change that we're recommending is on Jubal Early between Pleasant Valley and South Loudon Street. That section of Jubal Early currently has a speed limit of 40. So as you're coming into town on Millwood, it's 35 until you get to Pleasant Valley, then it's 40 until you get to South Loudon Street, and then it goes back down to 35. So we're recommending that we lower that to 35 so it's consistent the whole way through. We're recommending that we establish a speed limit of 35 on South Loudon Street from Jubal Early down to Weems Lane. When that project was done several years ago, there was There was nothing added about that speed limit being 35 in the code, so we're kind of going back and correcting that. Change number 6, we're recommending that we eliminate section A3, which talks about streets that have a speed limit of 25. We really don't need to do that because the default for streets is the speed limit is 25, so it's really kind of redundant having that in there. And basically, we've added some language that says, unless otherwise specified in this section, the speed limit on streets is 25 miles an hour in the city. And then the last change is Apple Blossom Drive by the mall. That's a private street, so we don't control the speed on private streets. So we're recommending to take that out of city code, that reference. So those are the changes that we're recommending. We think it will improve safety, and really that's our primary goal when it comes to traffic, is how we can make things safer for the traveling public. Happy to answer any questions, go over anything in more detail that you would like.
Thank you, Perry.
Yeah,
Counselor Beach?
good. Thank you. Perry, appreciate you looking at all this for safety. Where you're talking about the lanes being painted down, that worked on Brackenridge. I remember when we did that before the extension was put in, it did work well, so I like that idea. It says no budget, but what about signs, paint?
There would be expenses for that, but we already have that in the budget, in our highway maintenance budget.
All right.
So
No additional.
there would be no additional
Okay,
cost.
okay.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Two other streets, and I know we've talked about it before, I get a lot of concern about is on Meadow Branch Extension, where it's in front of Mahone Drive, early greens and downs. When
Yes.
they try to get out, people are going way faster than the speed limit. They're trying to get out of those subdivisions and turn the opposite way left.
Right.
No, left. So a lot of them have trouble getting across the 4-lane and the divided part with no signal there, but I know it's close to another one. And I know we've monitored it, but they still express concern.
Yeah, we've looked at that multiple times, and the speed limit through there is 25, so I think that's the right speed limit. There are times during the day where you might get a pretty good flow of traffic, and you'll have to wait a little while to be able to turn out of those streets but I think overall, I think that street functions very well, and it just does not warrant a traffic light there, and it doesn't warrant an all-way stop because the sight distance really is very good. You can see cars coming. If the sight distance would not be good, that would be a warrant for an all-way stop there, but it just does not meet the warrants of doing that.
Do we have crosswalk paint, hash lines on there at that place? I know we do up at Butler.
Yes, I don't know if we had. I'm trying to think.
It just said if we did, maybe we put one of those signs out. Maybe that would slow people down. The pedestrian sign.
We have several of those on Meadow Branch. I'll take a look at that.
And I know it's been brought up before, but I just want to reiterate it. Going from Valley Avenue on Pleasant Valley West, down by the shops and Harvest is on your left.
Right.
But I know it's commercial through there, but we have it at 25, and everybody goes 35 or more, it seems like.
Yeah.
But I think the reason was because of that turn, mostly.
Yes, the curve in the road where you cross Abrams Creek, that is designed at 25 miles an hour. So that's why we can't go up to 35 miles miles an hour, because it's a pretty sharp curve.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for looking at this. Oh, and bottom line is, whatever we do these, it still comes down to enforcement.
It does.
And we gotta keep that proactive.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Perry. I had a couple questions and maybe some comments. So as far as the engineering report, that's you all basically did the engineering.
Right.
And really looked at this in detail.
Yes.
Made determinations based on your expertise.
Right. Correct.
And agree that the enforcement piece is gonna be important, certainly in all of these areas, but in particular, I know the area that people talk a lot about is Pleasant Valley, South Pleasant Valley. And so, you know, I think we gotta find a way to, if we're going from 40 down to 35, to make sure that there's enforcement, or certainly enough signage for people to make that change.
Yeah.
And that is one of my questions is, what is the distance between the speed limit signs? Because I feel like sometimes there's not enough speed limit signs, and especially with this change going on, usually it's right at the intersection, and then you don't get it again until you're kind of close to the next light or intersection.
Right. Generally, the requirements are whenever a speed limit changes from one speed to another, you need to have a sign where that change is. There really is not a written requirement of how much spacing you have to have. It's more our discretion. And if there's areas where we need to add some more, we can certainly do that.
I think it's going to be, particularly in some of these areas, and I'm just thinking certainly the South Pleasant Valley from Berryville Avenue to Millwood, that to put more than 2 signs, you know,
Yes.
I think to do it, you know, 3 or 4 times in that distance, or maybe 5 times, I don't know. But I think at least initially for the first couple of years or something, people are going to see that. Maybe at some point you can pull one of the signs out, but
Right.
And reuse it somewhere.
Sure.
But I just think that change is, you know, just to reinforce for folks. And would imagine too, if you can put the flashing signs up so that people know we're going from 40 to 35.
Yes.
So I think the plan to narrow South Pleasant Valley is good. I was next to a bus, Winchester Public School bus this morning, and it already felt really close to me. So when we go from 12 to 10, what's the width of a bus? Is that, what is that, 6 feet, 8 feet? What is the width of a bus?
I would say maybe about 8.
8. Because it just, I mean, that's part of the, you know, that's part of what we're trying to do, is to like make it
Right.
narrower so people go a little bit slower. But
Right.
in like fire and rescue, I mean, the fire engines and stuff. But Chief Henschel's already signed off on this.
Right. All of the streets downtown are striped at 10 feet wide, and so you know if you watch, most vehicles have no problem going through a 10-foot wide.
Yeah.
7.5.
Oh, okay. Wow, okay, thanks. Okay, so you had mentioned regarding to lower the speed limit on Millwood Avenue between South Pleasant Valley, and in the, on the agenda, it says, and the CSX tracks, but you had said Cameron Street.
Well,
I think that would be good to say Cameron Street rather than the CSX tracks if we can. Is that what you're doing? Is it's going to be from South Pleasant Valley to Cameron?
see, right now, from Pleasant Valley to the railroad tracks, it's 35, and then it changes to 25 from there to
After
Cameron
the
Street.
railroad tracks?
Yeah.
Okay,
So it will all be 25.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. And then who enforces private streets for speed limits? Like people that are going around the mall that, I mean, who enforces them?
It's a good question. I don't know.
It's, the police will still.
Security?
Reckless driving, or it's not as if they lose their capacity to write tickets.
Right.
Now for certain things like stop signs within a private parking lot, and those by and large are unenforceable. They're not put there by us, they're not bound or anything, but if the police department sees someone, acting recklessly in a vehicle, and I suppose that could take the form of speeding, they still have the ability to actually take some form of action, but we don't, because we don't set the speed limits on a private road. We probably won't be a speeding infraction. Where do you go?
Yeah, I mean, the mall, they have their own security company, and when I worked there, I mean, they would work hand in hand with the police department, and then the mall would press charges if they needed to press charges.
All right, well, that's good to know. I bet that doesn't happen very often, because I would bet the mall security is probably more in the mall than.
Yeah, they do have a vehicle, and they travel around the perimeter of the mall.
Okay, that's, I guess the final question, are there other streets that you're looking at, to potentially maybe, I don't know, address narrowing or other issues that could, because I think we get a lot of requests from residents or comments saying, speeding is a problem in my neighborhood. So there are other areas that are kind of popping up on your radar that you're looking at down the road here?
Not in terms of speed limits, no. We tried to, we looked at pretty much the whole city, and these are the ones that we thought were warranted. But if there's, we're happy to look at any street at any time.
Okay.
So.
Very correct me if I'm wrong. There's the engineering and designs of the roadway, but then there's also our data that we gather from studies and whatnot as well. So
Yeah.
it's very easy for a resident who's not trained to judge speeds if they're standing out on the side of the road, a car could be coming by at 30 miles an hour and it feels like 50 or whatever, or they remember the one or two vehicles that day that happen to rev a lot. So we look at not just the engineering, but also our traffic data. And with the new cameras we're putting up too, we'll also have some better, especially around intersections, we'll have better data, more real-time data around how fast are vehicles moving through certain parts of the city.
Yeah, I know that one of the issues that came up on the South Pleasant Valley development was Parkway Street. And that is a very wide street.
Yeah.
And there tends to be, it's again, like the South Pleasant Valley, it's like a racetrack there. So,
Right. That's something we have looked at Parkway because we have received numerous, and what we're planning to do on Parkway is paint a double yellow line and then edge lines on 10 feet of either side. So that will keep the traffic in the middle, and it should slow traffic down because that is such a wide street. So streets like that has worked out very well.
Well, I want to thank you, as I'm sure other counselors in the community is going to be with this, because again, sidewalks and speeding are some of the top issues that I certainly hear, and others hear from residents. So thank you for putting this together.
Sure, happy to.
So I guess you want to make a motion to.
Make a motion to forward to council.
Madam Chair, in the public speak.
Sure.
Again, Phil Milstead, 2809 Ridgetop Court. I've memorized this, Winchester, Virginia. I think that many of the changes proposed are quite good. I look forward to them. I feel that perhaps more study is needed on some of the others. Some include perhaps raising the speed limit and others lowering, and I will give an example in both and why it's important. Over on Meadow Branch, it's a nice wide street, 25 miles an hour, hardly any driveways at all on it. Then you have over on Crossover Boulevard, nothing coming in, extremely wide street, even 2 lanes in each direction, and a median. And with sidewalks over on the side, 25 miles an hour, and it's only a short stretch that is 25 miles an hour. You have Middle Road. The name road kind of implies, okay, we got a long, empty stretch of road here. It's an artifact left over from where the county had all of that and named it. It's really a residential street, currently marked 35 miles an hour. It has a lot of driveways on it and cross streets. Not very long within the city limits, about a mile, but it has an awful lot of houses there. It is definitely residential. That needs to be lowered to be consistent with streets like Meadow Branch. And I do realize that Middle Road is going to be improved in the near future. I look forward to that, but it's not going to make it standard with the other streets of its type at all. And we need that. That tying in with that short stretch of 25 that is crossover, it gets back into like the street naming that I had mentioned earlier. It can be confusing for people driving, even long-term residents. If you make sudden changes to the speed limit for just short periods, and I'm glad that the Jubal Early crossover is getting its speed lowered down to 35 instead of the 40, because that was one of the problem spots. It makes it so that people start missing changes in the speed limit, just sign, type of a thing. You miss something somewhere along the way. I've missed a traffic light once like that years ago, just because it was so many traffic lights padded together. When that happens, people can inadvertently break the speed limit. And we don't want that. We don't want people being arrested too many times. I do like... Time's up?
3 minutes, time's up.
Okay, good, thank you. I'll sit down.
Yes.
Perry, you probably remember better than I do, it was right before I got on council in 07, 08. The citizens on Middle Road asked for that to be changed 25, and the county, the churches spoke against it to keep it 35 for some reason. It was
Yeah, that's been a while.
07, 08, I believe.
Yeah, I'd have to go pull my notes
Yeah.
out on that.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, do you want to make,
I already made a motion.
you make a
right?
motion
With approval.
Yeah,
with the recommendation to approve?
Okay.
yeah, to forward it on to council.
All in favor?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye, aye.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Perry.
Thank you.
Vote 20.
Let's see. Next item is R-2022-16, resolution of support for a collaborative citywide approach to proactively address community health in the city. Presenter is City Manager Dan Hoffman and myself.
So this is the result of council direction from the presentation from Valley Health on day 1 and the city staff on day 2. The direction was to bring back a resolution that captured some of the discussion. Bradley, if you scroll down to the resolution, we've got some of your standard whereases that Councilor Herbst and I helped come up with to provide context. And then there are the 6 items that this particular resolution directs of me, the city manager. So first one was to restart the Healthy City Initiative with a renewed focus on some of the issues listed above, particularly their root causes. Develop a healthy city policy for the council to adopt, looking at strategies from other cities, and to bring that back to the Common Council before the end of the year. Organize a Healthy City Summit within the next 12 months, bringing together all of the primary stakeholders such as Valley Health, state, our partners, even over at SU. Incorporate performance management best practices to measure progress, similar to what we've discussed at the retreat for other areas. And then utilize this body as the lead body and begin bringing this group monthly updates. And those monthly updates can take the form of monthly meetings, or if there was a month you didn't want to meet, we could also just email an update to the committee as well. So pretty straightforward. Happy to take any edits now. We'll put this on council agenda next week after the discussion here today.
Councilor Beach, questions?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea and a great start. I'm concerned, and I don't know, I guess it comes up to everybody's definition, healthy city. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of issues, clean air, mm-hmm. that's been addressed. Homelessness, they have, people need shelter, mm-hmm. Provisions, medicine, the first responders mm-hmm. reacting. So I don't see that possibly in here or included. It just says the initiatives discussed above, mental illness and
we can say
substance abuse.
Focus
and
on
others
issue and others as identified by the committee, because
mm-hmm.
we'll flesh out this committee over the next 6 to 9 months.
Yeah.
This committee will flesh all of those out, what actually goes into the policy.
Yeah, and we may get these two things, and then later add some of the other, try to help address the other things. So I just don't want to be limited or shoehorned to two things. And we have, as you and I talked about it, 293 nonprofits thereabouts mm-hmm. within the city limits. And unfortunately, some of them do duplicate services, and I would like for them to maybe coordinate their efforts, but I think the nonprofits really need to be partners in this, and Valley Health System, particularly on these two issues.
We can definitely make them part of that gathering to get a better sense. We did have a student recently doing kind of a bit of research on what nonprofits are in town that work in this space. So we've got a fairly updated recent roster mm-hmm. of the ones we're aware of. That with 293, I'm sure there's many more that they're one-person operations, or they're or they're just completely off our radar because they're not very active, or they don't provide direct services to any residents. But the ones that we're aware of, we do have an up-to-date roster, so we can bring that in.
Good. Yeah, I'm anxious to look at this. Appreciate it.
I think I'm really excited about this. I think particularly with the third whereas, a recent study by Robert Wood Johnson Foundation shows significant decrease in quality of life based on health outcomes over the past 5 years for the city. I think that right there just speaks to the importance of, us really doing a more intentional approach to a healthy city, and agree with Councilor Beach that, there's a lot in that. Certainly, social determinants of health, I think is an important piece, quality of life. I do have a couple of edits that I thought about. So the 1, 2, 3, 4th whereas the city council places the health and well-being of city employees among its highest priorities. I think that that's true, but I also think that the health and well-being of all city residents, really, in addition to our employees, because we certainly.
So we would edit that to say city council places the health and well-being of city residents and employees.
Yep, perfect. And then on the first whereas is, and this is some of the changes that have happened over the years, mental health and or substance abuse. So the appropriate way now to really refer to individuals that are struggling with substances or mental health is mental health and substance use disorder. Okay. Because using substance abuse really puts that person in a negative connotation.
Got it. So you're talking about the first whereas, sorry.
Yeah, the first whereas. So instead of it being mental health and or substance abuse, is to say mental health and substance or substance use disorders. Got it. And that's SAMHSA's language as well, so that aligns with the federal. So, I mean, I'm excited about this, and there has been somewhat of a healthy city initiative that's kind of gone on in the past, but I think that this will formalize that more and really help us move in a clearer direction. So, thank you.
We've already made the changes.
And
we're,
look at that,
There you
Carrie's
go.
rock and rolling.
so we'll,
Motion
Yeah.
to,
Yeah, make a motion to forward to council approval with the edits.
all those in favor? Aye.
All right.
So that's exciting. All right, that was the last item, so I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
All those in favor? Aye.
I guess.
All right. Thank you.
thank you.